What's up, my people? Welcome back to Relish the Journey. Hanging out here with Miles Biggs once again. And my guest on this episode is the one and only Professor Nez. He's got so much energy. You can hear it in my voice. He's got me all fired up. We talked all things personal branding, sort of overcoming, what people tell us should be possible versus what we can actually do if we actually put the work in. And his story of how he got to become the top LinkedIn consultant. He's got decades of experience. He's an actual professor in addition to all the online business he does. Just real stand-up guy. He brings so much value to this podcast. So buckle up and get ready to learn something, everybody. Here's Professor Nez. Professor Nez. The professor is in the house, ladies and gentlemen. It's nice to have you on. Nez, as I know you said I could call you, but I have to throw the professor in there.
Yes, no, all my friends call me Nez, but yeah, thank you. My brand is Professor Nez. It's great to see you, Miles. How are you, man?
I'm well. I'm like we were saying before, the content creation game's not for everyone, right? It's the end of a long day for me. I know you're in California, but I'm in Pennsylvania. It's almost 10 o'clock. This is my second podcast of the evening that I've recorded, and coming off a full day in the day job and family. I'm lucky to be this busy. That's what I say.
Oh, you're a trooper, dude. Yeah, I mean, I totally get it. Just, it's definitely not for everybody. You hear a lot of people, through the highways and byways of the online ecosystem say, yeah, you should do this. And yeah, you should go live and start a podcast and start a business and start a live show, do all this and start creating content, post videos. But they don't really communicate or, let on how absolutely insane it is. And I mean insane without being hyperbolic at all, Miles. It's literally an insane life. If you don't love creating, if you don't love serving people, if you don't love getting comments and emails and messages, at 2 a.m. say, hey, your video changed my life, don't do it, because this is so hard. It's extremely hard and difficult, especially if you're like me and you, a family man, and you got regular other gigs, you got obligations up the wazoo. It's definitely not for the faint of heart.
For sure. Yeah, and speaking of insanity, I'm staring at your LinkedIn profile right now, and so I gotta hype you up for people that might not know who you are, give them a little background on you. So first of all, your LinkedIn profile reads like a novel. You've done so many things. It's impressive. So you're a personal branding coach, a executive career coach, LinkedIn expert, online business strategist, resume writer, keynote speaker. We can throw a podcast in there as well. You've been the top, right? Not one of the number ones, like we said with Dave. I'm like the number one LinkedIn consultant. Yes. 4 years in a row. You've got almost 3 decades in business and branding, a few decades more in coaching, teaching, and training, leadership experience. The list goes on and on. So you, my friend, for sure know the definition of insanity and what it means to wear a lot of hats and be busy. But like you said, right, you love it or you wouldn't continue to do it.
Yeah. I mean, this is really important. I think that your listeners will get a lot of value out of this. I call this the coconuts and yachts syndrome, where, people will see somebody post on Instagram, for example, in front of a Porsche, waving a bunch of $100 bills, or, on the, yacht, and 19, loving life, making tons of money and saying, hey, you too can do this. It's just not accurate. It's just not true. You have the potential to do a lot of beautiful things. You do have the potential to transform your life in whatever way, shape, or form that arises, whether it's getting a new career or whether it is quitting your 9 to 5 or leaving a scenario, situation, relationship, a toxic workplace or what have you, and creating your own brand and your own empire. That's very, very possible. But it takes a ton of gumption, dedication, patience, persistence, consistence. The list goes on and on. I really try to make people understand that I have, a live stream podcast, which, I know you're going to leave notes in the show notes for that, which I really appreciate. It's the Nez Nation Live Personal Branding 101 podcast, I've got, a YouTube channel that I'm very, very proud of. I've got a LinkedIn brand, over 20,000 followers, over 200 recommendations from actual clients, one of the most on the entire platform. And for what I do, I do executive career coaching for LinkedIn members with LinkedIn. If you don't enjoy it, if you don't see the purpose in this type of work, you're going to burn out in less than 6 months. It's guaranteed. My whole thing is I like to set expectations. I like to orchestrate mindsets first before I advise people, clients, audience, whomever, subscribers, followers, whatever, that you should do this. I always try to say my whole platform is all about mindset and messaging. You cannot disconnect or segregate the two. The two are interrelated. If you want to do something different, if you want to transform your life, you have to create a compelling message, because I don't know who you are. You do not exist until I know your story. So you have to craft a very compelling message that says, hey, I, Miles, or I, XYZ, whatever, fill in the blank, whoever you are, this is my story. This is who I am. This is how I can help you. And so, but in order to get to that stage, in order to identify what is the key essential ingredient to your story, you got to know who you are. So it starts with mindset, right? You have to, so what's your purpose? What's your superpower? What's your core essentiality, if you will? That's not easy to identify. Some people think that that's really, really easy, but that's not easy to identify. So it really starts with that, setting the stage, making sure that, people understand what it takes to really build this awesome life that you can have. You can definitely have. And the only differential is how willing you are to be learning, how willing you are to listen, and how willing you are to put work.
Yeah, absolutely. And it takes a lot.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. And it takes a lot to get there. And so I know for you to have gotten there, there's a lot of work you had to do to get that for yourself before you can help other people achieve it. So if we rewind the hands of time and go back to when you were just Nez and not a professor, right? You didn't have all those recommendations and you weren't the top dog on LinkedIn. There's no YouTube channel, right? I know you shared a little bit of this on the live stream show we did with Dave Cooper about struggles you had with your own mindset. And I've been open on this podcast about my own struggles with anxiety and things that I've had to deal to overcome that and sort of harness it to make it work for me instead of cripple me, right? And I know you've had your own versions of that. So how did you get to this spot where now you're the person helping other people, change their mindset for the better? What work did you have to do to get to here?
I had to fail over and over and over and over again. I hope that your audience finds this very inspiring. One of my favorite quotes is Thomas Edison, where, he says that innovation is 90%, it's 10% creativity and 90% perspiration, right? Like it's Thomas Edison, before he invented the incandescent light bulb, he failed 1,000 times trying to find the right filament, and he didn't give up. Imagine if Thomas Edison would have given up at 985 or 999, right? Like, I believed in myself. I was not afraid of failure. I knew that I had to get myself out of my own way. And so I listened, I learned, I looked at the type of people that I felt were doing really well in my niche, and I decided to basically absorb. But more important than anything, I didn't allow myself to overthink before I tried to execute. What does that mean? I practiced. I've been live streaming, podcasting way before it was ever popular. I'm an early adopter of Twitter Live, early adopter of Blab, early adopter of LinkedIn Live, Facebook Live, YouTube Live. I've been creating content for a very, very long time. I go back to like the MySpace days where I had a very popular blog. I even really go back to the AOL days. I'm a lot older than you. I know that. We won't mention how much older, but I am older. And so, I had to, one of the things that I think you need to realize in my journey, how I got to this point was, I'm 43 years old. And so I didn't expect this to happen fast. I put in the time, I paid my dues, And, if you go to my YouTube channel, my first 50, 100 videos are absolute garbage. They're just terrible. It took time to hone those skills. It took time. It took perseverance. It took an understanding and belief in that, like, hey, you're going to get there. It's going to take a lot longer, maybe, than you might expect, maybe than you even want. But guess what? I knew that because it's an even playing field. This isn't like basketball where if you're 7'2", 320 like Shaquille O'Neal, you've got an inherent intrinsic advantage. The only differential in this ecosystem, in this landscape of the online reputation, online branding, online business world is how much are you willing to sacrifice? How much are you willing to commit? How much are you willing to sweat, bleed, toil in order to do this? And so, I was a business communication professor for a very, very long time, and I still teach, a couple of classes here and there. Hence the name Professor Nez. My students actually came up with that name, and it just kind of stuck. And it's beautiful. I mean, it just has a nice ring to it. I like it. I noticed something that, I found out that, wow, one of the things, the common denominator between my classes are that I tend to teach and I tend to talk from my heart. And everything that I talk about in the class relates to who I am in the real. And I'm very transparent with my students. And so I had such amazing evaluations. I'm not tooting my own horn here, Miles. I had such amazing evaluations that it actually garnered the suspicion of the administrators. Yeah, they did.
I thought
they
you were faking them.
Wait a minute. Yeah, they're like, nobody gets this kind of reviews. Nobody gets 9 out of 10 of my evaluations would be this class changed my life. 9 out of 10 of my evaluations would be this class was the best class I've ever had at any university. You know what I mean? And so my dean and my chair would be like, dude, what are you doing in your class? Are you paying these guys for these reviews? It was so much suspicion. And I understood that. I totally got it. But, it obviously it came to fruition that obviously they were real, and they were so blown away that I became sort of a kind of teacher of teachers, if you will. I started putting on workshops for other professors. And here's the difference. Here's the big differential. Most traditional conventional education, the idea or concept of being vulnerable in front of your students is completely foreign. And I just took a tire iron to that rule, and I just completely obliterated that rule. I basically just put myself out there, and I just said, this is who I am. I'm a human being. Just because I have professor as a title doesn't mean that I don't have feelings, doesn't mean that I don't have shortcomings, doesn't mean that I don't have failures. I started sharing my story in the real world, what my failures were, what my challenges were, both personal and professional. I just got really deep with my students. And that's when I realized, this was very young in my career. I was maybe 28, 29. I remember wow, this is the ticket. The ticket is you don't have to fake it till you make it. You don't have to try to act like a professor, You don't have to take it so seriously. You don't have to be so standoffish and it's us versus them mentality. The conventional way of education is I'm the professor, I'm behind this podium, and you people down here need to listen to me. That's the conventional way. And I know, Miles, you've probably had classes where you're like, this professor is the least engaging, does not connect with me at all. I just want to leave immediately, right? I've had tons of classes like that.
Absolutely.
I've got 3 degrees. And so you can imagine 99% of my professors were that way. There was literally, out of the thousands of professors I had, there was maybe 1 or 2 that inspired me, which is a sad number. And I know that that's true for most people. So I found out what the secret sauce was. The secret sauce was I don't have to do anything but be capital R. That's all I have to be. And what happened was a beautiful thing. And so I started getting so much engagement. People were begging. I mean, I had wait lists that were 3 pages long, people trying to get in my classes every semester. And it just pissed off the administration because they're like, no, we don't like this. We want people to, the normal thing is the students should hate your class because, that's how it should be. It means if they like your class, it means you're too easy. It means you're too this. I mean, I have such a gripe with education. Don't even get me started. But this is how it translated into my LinkedIn brand. This is how it translated into my YouTube channel. This is how it translated to my personal brand. I knew that if I wanted to really affect change And if I really wanted to reach the right people for me, and I did not need to put on any airs, I did not need to pretend, I did not need to put on an act, I didn't need to fake it till I make it. I knew that I needed to be 100% real and 100% vulnerable in all my multifacetedness, the good, the bad, the ugly, right? And that has made all the difference. That's why people, clients, I mean, if I'm doing something now, and I have been for many years, that I believe in. And here's what I want to say to your audience. If your audience is around the same age as you, you're like 30, right, Miles?
Yep, I'm 30.
Yeah, like here's what I'd like to say. For all you younger people that are listening to this podcast right now, maybe you're 29, maybe you're 35, maybe you're 40, who knows? Maybe you're 18. If you're feeling even a slight bit of a tinge of, man, I don't know what I'm going to do, or I don't know who I am. Everybody says you need to find this. Everybody says you need to discover this by this age. I'm telling you, it's all BS. It's all BS. Here, take it from somebody who's not only been in the public sector in education, but somebody who's been running businesses for over 30 years. Adaptation times infinity. You just need to be open. You just need to listen. You need to be humble. And what's beautiful is that right thing that you need to do for the rest of your life is going to find you. You need to make space for that to come to life and come to fruition. And so you're not doing anything wrong. Nobody's doing anything wrong. If you just do the best that you can and listen to that part of yourself that you know deep down in the crevices of your being, this is what lights you up. This is what electrifies your bloodstream. You will discover that. And when you discover that, it will literally be the greatest day of your life. You know, I was very lucky, Miles. I discovered at a very young age that it was my duty on this earth to inspire people. I love it more than anything. I love helping people more than anything. When somebody sends me a message and says, Nez, your video changed my life. I'm not depressed anymore. I'm not feeling suicidal anymore after watching your videos. That literally, Miles, is the greatest feeling on earth. I don't care how much money you have. It's literally the greatest feeling on earth. And so my point is allow for the discovery. I'm not going to say do what you love, because that's some bumper stickery, right? Here's what I'm going to say. Allow for the space for your purpose on this earth to find you. Just get out of the way. Don't overthink it. And try a bunch of different things. Especially fail over and over and over again. Failure is the greatest professor on the planet. Way better than Professor Nez. You need to experience. You need to taste everything. And so this is what I always say. I always say, don't be afraid, especially if you don't have kids and a ton of obligations. I know there might be some listeners who are like, Nez, I don't have the luxury of that. I totally get that. I'll get to you later. But for anybody who does not have a super ton of strings attached to you, and you're in that discovery phase, try everything, execute. If it fails, it fails. Don't take it personal. It has no meaning other than what you give it, right? So if you run a podcast and the podcast fails, well, guess what? Then try something else. If you start doing blogging and it's just not doing well and you've put your time into it, energy into it, and plus you're just not interested anymore, guess what? You don't have to keep beating a dead horse. You know what I'm saying, Miles?
Yeah, but also going back to something you said your first 1,500 YouTube videos. So for anybody that's saying, oh, my blog isn't working, it's like, okay, well, how many articles have you written? 5, right? Or 1,500?
No, not 50. Right? Not 50. I don't have that many videos. No, I meant. I apologize. I meant my first 50 videos.
Okay, when you said 1,500, I'm like, holy crap, he's done a lot of videos.
No. I apologize. Did I say that? I apologize. I actually meant probably my first 50 to 100 is what I meant to say. So
got it. But even that, 100 videos.
And by the way, that's true for any YouTuber.
Sure.
Like if you go to any YouTuber, like go to somebody who has 5, go to Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast is actually a perfect example. Mr. Beast has 30 million subscribers now. He's the top YouTuber on the planet, right? Not as far as subscribers go, but as far as popularity, he's probably the most popular YouTuber right now. This guy, it took him 8 years to finally turn his channel around. He had a bunch of videos. He probably did have 1,500 videos.
Yeah, but to this whole point, right? Like, did they suck, or did he assign that they sucked? And then he just didn't find the right thing yet that connected, right? So you just have to keep iterating. Right. Your adaptation times infinity, that whole mantra you have, it's like you can say it's a failure, but I really think that it's only a failure when you let it be. It can be a setback for as long as it needs to be versus a failure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I love the way you said that. And here's something really important, and why what I was saying earlier about not taking things personally and not taking these. You ask any entrepreneur, you ask anybody who's successful, forget entrepreneurs, doctors, bankers, lawyers, I mean, whoever. Their success, there isn't one successful person on the planet. There is not one. You will not find one successful person on this blue-green earth who has not failed over and over and over again. We need to get over this idea that failure is some kind of intrinsic meaning that you are a failure and that this implies you should not be doing, what you want to be doing. It's a real virus. That's a virus. That's a pandemic that's been going on for years, maybe centuries. And so I'm loving how there seems to be a lot more advocacy for these concepts such as self-awareness, these concepts such as, soft skills, communication, collaboration, emotional intelligence. I've been talking about self-awareness in my class for over 20 years, Miles. And I can't tell you how joyful it makes me to start seeing, a lot of these entrepreneurs, business owners, thought leaders, what have you, talk about awareness and talk about empathy and talk about, emotional intelligence. I've been talking about this for over 20 years when people were laughing at me.
Sure.
Saying, what are you talking about? You know what I mean?
Yeah, imagine where it's going to be in another 20 years. That's what gets me excited.
Man.
Like, I'm only 30. At some point, there's going to be a changing of the guard, right? Where like, I'll get to be the new you in 20 years, right? When you finally decide to retire and stop, take a break, then I'll have put in my decades of experience, and it's just like everything's in the making. And that's what I have to remind myself when I get frustrated at things not happening as fast as a man is like, or whatever, right? It's like, dude, you're only 30. You've got time. In fact, a lot of time that one day,
oh my God,
it's just going to all click.
You've got gobs and gobs of time. You have a ton of time, and you're going to be, it's also, here's the thing too, Miles, I want to say this as well. There's a lot of judgment from so-called what have you, like leaders or what have you. And I'm really proud of this generation of millennials and Gen Z. I see a lot of purpose. And what does that mean? This is what it means. It means that this generation actually cares about doing something that is meaningful to them. When I was growing up, I'm a little bit older than millennials. I'm Gen X, I guess. I don't know. These labels are all ridiculous.
Yeah, they are.
They're totally ridiculous.
Which, as a side note for labels, I've heard that they're going to call it the coronial generation for all the baby. Like, it's going to be like the next baby boom.
Yeah,
it's going to be the coronials.
The coronials. Yeah. God, of course they are.
Marketers get a hold of everything, right? Even generation.
Of course they do. Yeah, marketers get a hold of everything. Exactly. I when I was growing up, it was very, kind of black and white. It was, if you grow up, you make sure that you get into a decent school. You absolutely have to get a college degree. Like, dude, when I was growing up, Miles, if you didn't have a college degree, that was synonymous with being hopeless. You were basically a bum.
Yeah, it was even like that with me. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, I'm millennial. I guess I'm in the middle of the millennial stream, but it was for sure that like you graduate, go to college, and it was sort of accepted to go to like a VOTEC or just go right into the workforce, but it was definitely looked down upon as like, you're not going to earn as much, you're capping your potential. It's like all these negative things that sort of make you feel like, well, if I'm going to do anything, then I have to go, right? I have to go to college and bury myself in debt to get a piece of paper that I'm not going to really use anyway, right? We find out on the other side. So I think my generation, like I guess half of the millennial generation, still kind of fell into that. And it is fairly recent, this shift to being more accepting of, well, I think partly because we had to, right? Like if we think about going back to home building, and we did this live stream with Dave Cooper, who's in housing, and the shortage of skilled labor in the housing industry is wild. And because of that, right, we weren't making it okay to say, I want to go build houses. I want to swing a hammer. It was like, you want to do what? You'll never amount to anything, son.
Yeah. What are you gonna do for money?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I used to get that. I mean, not only in the eyes of like society, but in the eyes of my parents too. Like, if I didn't get a degree, I mean, imagine this. I mean, here, let me paint a little picture for you, Miles. My family, God bless them all, most of the people in my family are in one of two categories. Either they're doctors or they're lawyers, or actually, I'll add one more category, or they're engineers. I mean, my whole family is an extremely educated, they're big believers in education, big believers in doing the traditional route to adulthood and securing a living. I talk about black sheep. Imagine this family full of lawyers, doctors, and engineers. And I say, hey, I want to be a writer. I want to be a creator. That's what I want to do. They all laughed at me. They're like, the first question my mom asked was, what are you going to do for money? That's fine that you want to be a writer, but how are you going to make a living? I didn't even think like that, that this was going to be anything other than what I would do for money or otherwise. Right. And so now, when you fast forward now, my God, I mean, there's so many different amalgamations. There's so many different opportunities. Technology has created this insane ecosphere of just unbelievable chances. I mean, at bats, you know what I mean? Like,
look at
everybody
esports,
has a shot.
Right? Like people that literally make money playing video games and like flying drones around with VR goggles on. It's on ESPN, and
it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, you remember when your parents would say you play too many video games, your brain's going to melt?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I remember when playing video games was looked on the same. It was judged the same as taking drugs. Like, if you play too many video games, it's like you're a drug addict.
Right. And those AV geeks,
used to play Madden,
who are now building all the social media platforms that we spend all our time on. Yeah.
Yeah, we used to play Madden, and Tiger Woods Golf, and all the SNES games, Mike Tyson's Punch Out or what have you. Street Fighter was like my big one, when I was coming up. And Mortal Kombat, we used to play that till 2, 3 in the morning. We were kids. Now it's like you can win contests, you can build an audience, you can live stream on Twitch and actually get people paying you to play video games. It's insane. It's unbelievable. I think it's beautiful. I actually do.
Yeah, because it takes away that how will you make money from that thing that you love? It's like, well, the internet. That's the answer. The internet. That's how you make money.
It's phenomenal. I mean, it's just phenomenal if done right. It's the formula that I try to advocate to my clients and audience is this, Miles. It's about purpose. You need to discover your purpose, okay? And then once you do that, then you can craft a compelling message. And when you have those two aligned, purpose, message, that's when impact happens. So purpose, message, impact. You'll see that kind of tattooed all over my branding, all over my website. It's purpose, message, even my live streams. Purpose, message, impact. That's the genealogy and the chronology. And that's what I love to talk about. I love to help people with. And it's just, I'm so lucky that it's actually, bared amazing fruit. So I've gotten amazing results.
So that's a good segue into my next question. And you can't use those 3 words since those were 3 words right there. But how would you, looking back on this conversation and everything you've accomplished and all the people you've made an impact with, right? How would you describe your whole journey in just 3 words without using those 3?
Oh, wow. Well, I can't use those 3.
No, make you think on the spot.
My entire journey?
Yes.
My entire journey, I would say it's in 3 words. My entire journey to where I am right now. Adaptation definitely is one of them. Consistency, and the last word, adaptation, consistency, and I guess I would probably say perseverance. I think, and I don't know. I might change those words later, but right now those are the ones that come to mind. I mean, I would definitely say adaptation is like probably, if there was one word of those 3 that's the most pivotal to describe my journey, it's adaptation. But yeah, I would say adaptation, consistency, and perseverance. I mean, those are some of the, and that's helped me in everything in my life. That's helped me be a father. It really transcends professional journey, even life journey, is adaptation, consistency, and perseverance. You're gonna come across a lot of walls in your life. You're gonna come across a lot of problems, a lot of even really vindictive, jealous people, like, Miles, I'd like to be really open with you right now if I can.
Sure.
I'm shocked about this online space, like the lack of camaraderie sometimes that goes on, like the amount of backstabbing and the cutthroatness. Like I thought that this was going to be like a huge community of creators and online business owners, and but it's just like everything else. It's super super clicky, right? I've been lucky enough to find people like you and Dave, and there's a few people out there that I'm just so blessed, especially on LinkedIn. But some of these so-called influencers or whatever, man, I'm kind of shocked, and so you're going to get that. You're going to get that all the time. And so by focusing on what's really, really important, that's where perseverance comes in, and disregarding the rest, watch what happens. Beautiful things are going to happen.
Yeah, and I think adding onto that, right, just your idea of consistency, it's also just consistently being you, like in your capital R real,
Beautiful.
right?
I couldn't say it better.
Not getting as tempting as it could be to get brought into those clicks or to maybe think you're cooler than you are and get an ego, right? That you have to remember why you started and who you were when you set out on the journey and be that person, because that's what's going to make the space, going back to something you said earlier, right? For that true love to find you. And that's what you get to do forever and be fulfilled and all that rainbows and butterflies stuff people talk about happening. But, it's rare that we focus enough to make it happen for ourselves.
I mean, here's the thing. You could definitely be something other than yourself. But here's what I always say. I say, see how long that lasts, because it's impossible to sustain a front. It just is. It's impossible to sustain that. I think it was Abraham Lincoln. I think we talked about this a little bit on you and Dave's show. Abraham Lincoln once said, there isn't a man intelligent enough or with a good enough memory to be a successful liar. You can definitely succeed. I've seen tons of people succeed by being something other than themselves. But if you really, truly want this thing to last, and you want a brand, you want a reputation, you want a image and perception of you that people, get a good feeling about, it's all about feeling, right? It's impossible to sustain that front. You're going to get exposed. You're going to get outed. And so I always say, just start with you. Start with you, because you don't have to worry about, you hear people all the time, Miles. I know you've heard this too. You need to fake it till you make it. I think that's the worst advice on the planet. Like, you don't have to fake anything. You don't have to fake anything. You just have to literally just be as you as possible, whatever that is, whatever manifestation that comes in, be as you as possible, and you're going to attract the right people, the right clients, the right customers. Because if you're trying to put up a front, or you're trying to be like this person, I see a lot of people trying to copy other people, and copy other whatever, marketers, business leaders, social media influencers, what have you. And yeah, you might get away with that for maybe a couple months, maybe a couple years, who knows, maybe even longer, but it's going to be impossible to sustain that over the long term. And longevity is something that allows you that freedom of, I don't have to worry about going back to the 9 to 5, or I don't need to worry about, doing something I hate, because I've built something that started with that epicenter, that seed of 100% me. And I don't have to do anything else other than be me. And so, I see a lot of people who feel like, the only reason I'm saying this, Miles, is because I see a lot of people who are like, well, all this BU crap, it gets very it's very fluffy. It's very you know what I mean? Like very bumper stickery. Hey man, be yourself. Hey man, just be real. But it's really, and you can do it the other way, but it's really difficult to do it the other way,
Yeah. Well, to me, that's like one of my favorite debates is success versus fulfillment, right? So like you could fake it till you make it and be successful, but what will make you fulfilled is when you do it as you. And I think why a lot of people think it's all woo-woo and fluffy to say, "Oh, be yourself." It's because they don't want to face the fact that they have no idea who they actually are. And that's the harder work that they have to do. They have to realize who they are before they can be that person. And that can be uncomfortable. And so it's easier just to, puff your chest out and tell someone they're being fluffy instead of actually looking inward where it counts.
That's spot on. And you know what I would say too, to add, just so your audience gets a ton of value from this, Miles? Whatever it is that you think is overwhelming, trust me when I say this, especially when it comes to branding, content creation, building, a platform for yourself. I'm telling you right now, all the people who have the audience, who have the leverage, who have the success, they experience that same overwhelmed feeling. And I'm telling you right now, once you dive in, as soon as you pass that initial overwhelming hump that everybody gets. I mean, people who want to start, being more healthy in their life and start a new exercise regimen, there's that kind of overwhelming. It's when you start anything, when you disrupt the pattern of your life, there's going to be a little bit of overwhelm. Change does not come easy to human beings. We are creatures of habit, right? I'm telling you right now, everybody listening right now, the University of YouTube and the University of Google is the most phenomenal university on the planet. You don't have to go to business school. You don't have to go to marketing school. You don't have to go to social media camp. Literally, if you just invest a little bit of time, a little bit of energy, exercise your critical discernment, and listen, absorb. The University of Google and the University of YouTube is phenomenal. Trust me when I say this. If you want to learn anything about the technical aspects, the marketing aspects, the distribution aspects, the platform aspects, whatever, website creation, the University of YouTube, the University of Google. That is something, if I could add another kind of word to my journey, it's just been me humbling myself and not letting that overwhelm me.
Right. Yeah.
Really. I mean, the overwhelm can be a bigger barrier, a bigger wall than anything else. That little feeling of like, I'm going to build a what? I'm going to build a personal brand? I'm going to create a podcast? I'm not a radio guy. I don't have the equipment. You have all these thoughts that go through your head. Please, I'm begging you, everybody listening right now, I'm begging you, dispel all of those thoughts. Don't listen to those thoughts. Tell Professor Nez, I give you permission. Professor Nez, give you permission to put a flamethrower to those thoughts in your head. They are meaningless, and they are just going to get in your way. If you just sit down, all you need to do is sit down and just say, I'm going to just really figure out how to do email marketing. I'm going to really figure out how to do live streaming. I'm going to really figure out how to create a LinkedIn profile. If you just dig deep and dispel those thoughts, watch what happens. I am no different than you. Miles is no different than me. We're not different from each other. The only difference between Miles and myself and you guys listening is we didn't let that overwhelm take over.
I feel like I'm going to end it there because that's a phenomenal soundbite. I don't want to tarnish it with any more thoughts. That's a great recap of really the whole conversation right there. So Professor Nez, thank you. We'll be sure to link up to your podcast so people can find more of all this goodness whenever they want on demand with your stuff, and your website and LinkedIn and all the places you're at. We'll send people your way so they can join the hashtag Nez Nation, right?
Yes, I would love for everybody to be a part of Nez Nation. And, I'm Professor Nez all over social. Obviously, I have my website, professornez.com, but I would love it if you guys, especially if you're listening to this podcast, that means you like podcasts. Well, if you like Miles's podcast, which Miles is just phenomenal. I'm super impressed with what you've been doing and how you've been executing, Miles. I think you're going to maybe get a kick out of my podcast too. So I would love it if you would go check out my podcast. You can go to professornez.com/podcast, or just Google or just search in any podcast app, Spotify, Google, Apple, Nez Nation Live, and you will see us. I would love for you guys to be there.
Awesome. Well, thanks again.
Hey, man, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for inviting me. It really means the world to me, brother. This has been a blast, and thank you, man. It was awesome.
All right, that'll do it for this episode. Thank you again to Professor Nez for being our guest, and thank you, of course, to all of you for listening. Appreciate you all so much and for being a part of the Relish the Journey family. Please like this episode, subscribe to the show, give me a rating, give me a review, do the same for Nez. Help us spread our messages out there and reach larger audiences. That is what gets us excited to wake up every day. So for your part in that, we both thank you. Until next time, everybody, cheers.